18 years. 18 years I gave everything to this company, and they threw me out like yesterday's garbage. But what they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment for the last 2 years. Have you ever worked somewhere so long that you became part of the foundation? Well, watch what happens when you remove a foundation stone. The day they fired me, I smiled, and that terrified them. I sat in my car in the parking lot, thinking about my daughter's college tuition due next month. But they made one fatal mistake. They kept me logged into the system for 24 hours. What would you do if everything you built was about to be taken away by someone half your age? I could walk away quietly, or I could show them what 18 years of institutional knowledge really means. The new boss wanted to rejuvenate the team. Well, I was about to rejuvenate their entire understanding of consequence. This is the story of how the despised became the powerful. My name is Robert Miller, and I started at TechFlow Solutions 18 years ago as a junior analyst. Back then, I was hungry, ambitious, and foolish enough to believe that hard work always pays off. I'd stay until 3 in the morning, debugging code, perfecting presentations, making sure every client deliverable was flawless. Those early years, I practically lived at the office. I'd come home so late that my daughter Sarah was already asleep, and I'd just peek through her bedroom door to catch a glimpse of her peaceful face. My wife Linda would be waiting up, exhaustion written across her features. "Robert, Sarah asked me today if you still live here," Linda would say, trying to keep the hurt out of her voice. "She doesn't remember the last time you read her a bedtime story." "Just until this project is done," I'd promise. "Then things will slow down." But things never slowed down. There was always another crisis, another deadline, another opportunity to prove myself indispensable. I missed school plays, soccer games, birthday parties. I told myself I was building something, not just for the company, but for my family's future. And it seemed to be working. Within 5 years, I'd developed a customer relationship management system that increased our client retention by 40%. The old CEO, James Wilson, called it revolutionary. I won Employee of the Year 3 times running. My salary climbed steadily, and I finally felt like I was providing the life Linda and Sarah deserved. But there was always this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. During one late-night coding session, I discovered a security vulnerability in our new client portal. Nothing catastrophic, but something that could potentially expose customer data if exploited. Instead of immediately reporting it through proper channels, I decided to fix it myself quietly. I told myself I was being proactive, saving the company from embarrassment. Have you ever sacrificed your family time for a company that you thought would take care of you forever? James Wilson and I had developed a strong working relationship. He'd often joke that I was his right-hand man, the guy who could solve any technical crisis. When board meetings ran long, he'd text me to grab dinner and discuss strategy. I felt valued, essential, untouchable. But then the rumors started. TechFlow was being courted by a larger tech conglomerate. Acquisition talks were happening behind closed doors. James assured the staff that any purchase would mean expansion, more opportunities, better resources. Should I report the security flaw and risk being blamed for missing it initially, or quietly fix it and hope no one noticed? The weight of that decision would come back to haunt me later. The first signs appeared on a Tuesday morning in March, I'd submitted a proposal for automating our customer onboarding process. 6 months of research, cost-benefit analysis, implementation timeline. It was solid work, the kind of strategic thinking that had earned me recognition for years. 2 weeks later, I sat in the conference room watching Jennifer Matthews, a 28-year-old associate fresh from her MBA program, present my exact proposal to the new CEO. She had reformatted the slides and added some trendy buzzwords like digital transformation and disruptive innovation. But the core ideas, the financial projections, even some of my specific language, it was all there. Marcus Chen, our new 35-year-old CEO from Stanford, nodded approvingly as Jennifer outlined her vision for modernizing our processes. I sat there, stunned, waiting for her to acknowledge my contribution, or for Marcus to ask about the original source material. Neither happened. After the meeting, I approached Jennifer privately. "That was an interesting presentation," I said carefully. "Some of those ideas seemed familiar." She looked me straight in the eye without flinching. "Innovation builds on existing concepts, Robert. I'm sure we've all had similar thoughts about process improvement." That evening, I called my mother, hoping for some perspective. At 78, she'd weathered decades of workplace politics herself. "How's work going, honey?" she asked. "When are they going to promote you to management? Your friend from high school, David, he's already a director at Facebook." "It's complicated, Mom. The company's changing." "Well, after 18 years, they should recognize your value. You've given them your best years." The irony wasn't lost on me. I had given them my best years, and now I was watching someone else get credit for my ideas. Over the following weeks, I noticed subtle changes. I wasn't invited to the strategic planning session. The first time in 15 years I'd been excluded from quarterly planning. When I asked Marcus's assistant about it, she looked uncomfortable. "Oh, that's just for the senior leadership team and some select contributors," she said, not meeting my eyes. But Jennifer was there. I could see her through the glass conference room walls, actively participating in discussions about the company's future direction. The final insult came when Marcus called me into his office for what he termed a mentorship opportunity. He wanted me to train Jennifer on our legacy systems, help her understand the institutional knowledge that would be valuable as the company evolved. "Robert, you've built something incredible here," Marcus said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair. "But the future belongs to people who can bridge that old-school expertise with new-age thinking. Jennifer represents that bridge. Ever felt like you were suddenly invisible in a place where you used to matter?" The writing was on the wall, but I wasn't ready to accept it. That night, I sat in Sarah's room as she did homework. At 16, she was applying for summer internships, full of optimism about her future. "Dad, I'm nervous about these interviews," she said, looking up from her laptop. "What if they don't think I'm good enough?" "Just be yourself, sweetheart. Show them your passion and work ethic. People always recognize real talent." The words felt hollow as I said them, but Sarah smiled and hugged me. "Thanks, Dad. You always know what to say." I had promised to buy her the new iPhone 15 for her birthday, but suddenly I wasn't sure I'd have a job long enough to make good on that promise. Should I confront Marcus about being marginalized, or continue to quietly observe and document everything? 2 days later, I was returning from lunch when I heard voices from Marcus's office. The door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried clearly into the hallway. "We need to phase out the old guard," he was saying. These legacy employees are anchored to outdated methodologies. They're not adapting to our new culture. I froze, pressing myself against the wall to listen. What's the timeline? Another voice asked. I recognized it as Beth from HR. I want the transition complete by end of Q2. We'll frame it as restructuring, offer some early retirement packages to ease the blow. But the bottom line is, we need fresh energy in these senior positions. My blood ran cold. 18 years of dedication, and I was being discussed like an outdated piece of equipment. That weekend, I couldn't shake what I'd overheard. I found myself going through old emails, performance reviews, project documentation. If they were planning to push me out, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. What I discovered in my email archives changed everything. There it was, buried in my sent folder from 6 months ago. A thread titled Operation Fresh Start. I had been forwarded on it accidentally, probably a reply-all mistake that no one caught. The email chain detailed a systematic plan to replace employees over 45 with younger hires. It wasn't just about me. They were targeting 12 senior staff members across different departments. The language was clinical, corporate, but the intent was clear. Age discrimination dressed up as strategic realignment. Jennifer wasn't just some ambitious MBA who happened to steal my ideas. She was part of a calculated strategy to gather intelligence on senior employees' projects and processes before they were eliminated. But here's the thing they didn't know about me. When you've been in IT for 18 years, you develop certain skills. You learn to think ahead, to prepare for system failures, to have backup plans for your backup plans. I sat in my home office that night, Linda asleep upstairs, and I started making copies. Every email, every document, every project file that proved my contributions to the company. I created encrypted backups on external drives, uploaded files to secure cloud storage accounts they couldn't access. Have you ever worked somewhere so long that you became part of the foundation? Well, watch what happens when you remove a foundation stone. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly documented everything. I used my legitimate access to HR systems to pull salary data, promotion records, demographic information. What I found was damning. A clear pattern of older employees being forced out while younger, less experienced workers took their positions at significantly lower salaries. 3 colleagues approached me privately during this time. Michael from accounting, Susan from sales, David from operations. They'd all noticed the same patterns, felt the same pressure. We started meeting for coffee, sharing our observations, building a case. They asked me to train my replacement last week, Susan whispered over her latte. Told me it was for cross-training purposes, but the kid is asking about everything. My client relationships, my negotiation strategies, even my commission structure. I've been documenting everything, Michael added. Every conversation, every email, every slight. My lawyer says if they make a move, we might have grounds for a class action. But I was thinking bigger than a lawsuit. I was thinking about justice, the security vulnerability I'd discovered months earlier. I'd fixed it, but I'd also kept detailed records of the flaw and my repair process. I had backdoor access to systems I'd helped design. Not for anything malicious, but for maintenance, for troubleshooting, for the kind of emergency support that had made me invaluable for 18 years. The next Monday, Marcus called me into his office for an emergency meeting. Beth from HR was there. along with Jennifer, and a man I didn't recognize with a legal pad and a grim expression. "Robert, we need to discuss some performance concerns," Marcus began, but I could see right through the corporate speak. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. I walked into that conference room knowing it would be my last day as an employee of TechFlow Solutions. But what they didn't know was that it would also be the first day of their downfall. "Robert, we're restructuring," Marcus said, not even bothering with pleasantries. "Your position is being eliminated effective immediately." I looked around the room. Jennifer sitting smugly with a folder that I knew contained my job description. Beth avoiding eye contact. The legal representative taking notes like this was just another routine termination. 18 years, I said quietly. "And this is how it ends?" "We're prepared to offer you 2-month severance if you sign this non-disclosure agreement and non-compete clause," Beth said, sliding papers across the table. I glanced at the documents. Standard corporate language designed to silence me and prevent me from working in the industry for 2 years. They wanted to erase me completely. Jennifer couldn't resist twisting the knife. "Robert, you have to understand. The company is moving in a new direction. We need people who can adapt to change, who understand modern business practices." That's when I smiled. Just a small, knowing smile that made Marcus shift uncomfortably in his chair. "Is there something funny about this situation?" he asked. "No, nothing funny at all," I replied. "I'm just thinking about how much you don't know." The room went quiet. Beth's pen stopped moving. "I'll need 24 hours to clean out my files and transfer everything properly," I continued. "Company policy requires a proper handoff of all ongoing projects and system access, right?" Marcus looked uncertain. He clearly wanted me gone immediately, but I was right about company policy. They couldn't risk me walking away without transferring critical information. "Fine," he said grudgingly. 24 hours, but you'll work under supervision." I stood up, straightened my tie, and looked each of them in the eye. "Thank you for 18 wonderful years. I hope you're prepared for what comes next." As I walked out of that conference room, I was already mentally activating every backup plan I'd spent 2 years developing. They thought they were firing a broken-down old employee. What they'd actually done was declare war on someone who knew where all the bodies were buried. That night, I sat in my car in the empty parking lot, looking up at the TechFlow building, where I'd spent the best years of my career. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Dad, I got the internship. Can't wait to tell you all about it." I smiled, typing back, "Congratulations, sweetheart. Dad's about to start a new chapter too." 24 hours. They had no idea what I could accomplish in 24 hours. The first article appeared on Business Insider 3 days after my termination. The headline read, "Tech Companies Aegis Purge Exposed. Internal Documents Reveal Systematic Discrimination." I was sitting at my new kitchen table office, coffee growing cold, watching the story unfold across social media. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications as the article was shared thousands of times. The journalist had done her homework. Every detail I'd provided was corroborated with additional sources. But here's what made my heart race. Someone else had come forward. An anonymous current employee had leaked additional documentation that I hadn't even seen. The Operation Fresh Start emails I discovered were just the tip of the iceberg. Sarah bounded downstairs, getting ready for school. Dad, why do you look so serious? Is everything okay? I closed my laptop and smiled at her. Everything's perfect, sweetheart. Dad's just watching some people learn important lessons about consequences. 20 minutes after the article went live, TechFlow's main server crashed. Then their customer portal went down. By noon, their website was displaying error messages. The IT help desk was flooded with calls from panicked clients who couldn't access their data. Marcus called my cell phone 17 times that first day. I let every call go to voicemail. Bob, this is Marcus. Look, I know we had our differences, but we need to talk. The whole system is falling apart, and Jennifer doesn't understand how you built the infrastructure. Please call me back. The desperation in his voice was music to my ears. By the end of the week, 3 major clients had terminated their contracts. TechFlow's stock price dropped 15%. The company that had been so eager to modernize was discovering that some institutional knowledge couldn't be replaced with fresh energy and MBA buzzwords. Linda found me in the garage that evening, organizing old project files. Robert, I'm worried. What if they try to come after you? What if they blame you for their problems? I pulled her close, feeling lighter than I had in years. Honey, they can't touch me. Everything I did was legal, documented, and justified. I'm not the one who broke employment laws. The beautiful thing about being in IT for 18 years is that you understand systems, not just computer systems, but organizational systems, legal systems, media systems. I'd spent 2 years learning exactly how they all connected. Sometimes the truth has devastating power. The Department of Labor investigation began the following Monday. Federal investigators arrived at TechFlow's headquarters with boxes and legal documents. I watched from my car across the street as employees streamed out during lunch break. All of them on their phones, probably calling lawyers or updating their LinkedIn profiles. My former colleague Michael texted me from inside the building. They're interviewing everyone. Jennifer's been crying in the bathroom for an hour. Marcus looks like he's seen a ghost. What the investigators found was worse than even I had documented. The systematic discrimination wasn't limited to age. They discovered patterns of gender and racial bias in promotions and salary decisions going back 3 years. Marcus's modernization initiative had disproportionately targeted women over 40 and minority employees with decades of experience. Sarah came home from school that afternoon with a strange expression on her face. Dad, some reporters called our house today. Mom told them you weren't available for comment. Are you famous or something? I knelt down to her level. Not famous, sweetheart. Just someone who decided to stand up for what's right. Sometimes when you do that, people pay attention. Are you in trouble? No, baby, but some other people are learning that actions have consequences. That evening, I received an unexpected call from James Wilson, the former CEO who'd been forced out 6 months before my termination. Bob, I saw the news coverage. I want you to know that what you're doing, it's not just about TechFlow. I've been documenting everything from my end too. This pattern is happening across the entire industry. What do you mean? Private equity firms are pushing these policies. It's not just Marcus making these decisions. He's following a playbook that's being implemented at dozens of companies. Cut labor costs by eliminating senior employees. Replace them with cheaper, less experienced workers show short-term profit improvements. The scope of what I'd uncovered was bigger than one company's discrimination. I was looking at an industry-wide conspiracy to devalue experienced workers. Should I continue exposing just tech flow, or help investigators understand the broader pattern affecting thousands of workers? Federal investigators requested my testimony the following week. I sat in a sterile conference room downtown, facing a panel of Department of Labor attorneys who hung on every word as I walked them through my documentation. Mr. Miller, you've provided us with unprecedented insight into systematic age discrimination practices, the lead investigator said. Your evidence suggests this isn't isolated to your former employer. That's correct. I've been in contact with former employees from at least 6 other companies who report identical patterns, same consulting firm recommendations, same implementation timeline, same demographic targeting. Would you be willing to serve as a witness in a broader investigation? The weight of that question settled over me. Testifying wouldn't just mean justice for me and my colleagues. It could protect thousands of other workers from experiencing what we'd gone through. Yes, I said without hesitation. But I want protection for the other witnesses. Some of them are still employed and afraid of retaliation. Within days, the story exploded beyond business publications. CNN picked it up, then NPR, then the major networks. I found myself watching news anchors discuss employment discrimination while using tech flow as the primary example. Marcus tried one last desperate move. He showed up at my new consulting office on a Thursday afternoon, somehow bypassing building security. My assistant called me in a panic. Mr. Miller, there's a man here who says he used to be your boss. He's very agitated and demanding to see you. I found Marcus in the lobby, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. The confident Stanford MBA, who dismissed me as an outdated legacy, was gone, replaced by a man facing the complete destruction of his career. Bob, please, can we talk privately? Against my better judgment, I led him to a small conference room. Linda had warned me not to meet with him alone, but I was curious about what he had to say. I never meant for any of this to happen, he began, his voice shaking. The board, the private equity partners, they gave me an ultimatum. Cut labor costs by 30%, or they'd replace me too. So you decided to destroy people's lives to save your own job? I thought I could make it surgical, strategic, get rid of the highest paid employees, bring in fresh talent at lower salaries. The consultants made it sound like standard corporate restructuring. Does understanding someone's motives mean you have to forgive them? Marcus, you looked me in the eye and called me outdated. You watched Jennifer steal my work and promoted her for it. You didn't just eliminate my position. You tried to erase my contributions. He slumped in his chair. You're right. I became everything I used to hate about corporate culture. But Bob, there are bigger players involved here. The people who gave me those orders, they're doing this to companies across the industry. That's when Marcus handed me a USB drive. Internal communications from the private equity firm. Names, companies, timelines. If you really want to change things, this will show you who's really pulling the strings. I stared at the small device, understanding that it represented a choice. I could focus on my personal victory against TechFlow. Or I could help expose a conspiracy that was affecting thousands of workers nationwide. Why are you giving me this? Because you were right, and I was wrong. And because maybe if we stop the people at the top, other employees won't have to go through what you did. Honestly, that night, I sat in my home office examining the contents of Marcus's USB drive. What I found was staggering: a coordinated effort by a major private equity firm to implement identical workforce optimization strategies across their portfolio companies. The language was clinical, but the human cost was devastating. I called Linda into the office. "Honey, I need to show you something. This is bigger than just my situation at TechFlow." She read over my shoulder as I scrolled through document after document. Email chains discussing legacy workforce reduction. Spreadsheets calculating savings from replacing experienced employees with recent graduates. Presentation slides about maximizing human capital efficiency. "Robert, this is horrible. How many people are affected?" "Based on these documents, thousands, maybe tens of thousands." Sarah appeared in the doorway, home from a friend's house. "Dad, you look really serious. What's happening?" I thought carefully about how to explain this to my 16-year-old daughter. "Sarah, remember when you asked me about standing up for what's right?" "Yeah." "Well, sometimes when you do the right thing, you discover that the problem is much bigger than you originally thought. Now, I have to decide whether to keep fighting or whether I've done enough." She sat down next to me, looking at the documents on the screen with the serious expression she'd inherited from her mother. "Dad, if you could help more people like you, wouldn't that be worth it?" Out of the mouths of babes. The next morning, I called the federal investigators and turned over Marcus's evidence. What followed was the largest employment discrimination investigation in the Department of Labor's history. Within 6 months, I found myself testifying before a congressional subcommittee on workplace discrimination. The hearing room was packed with cameras, reporters, and affected employees from across the country. "Mr. Miller," the committee chairwoman asked, "in your opinion, what enabled this systematic discrimination to continue unchecked?" "Congresswoman, it succeeded because workers like me thought we were isolated cases. We believed that if we just worked harder, stayed loyal longer, somehow we'd be safe. The perpetrators counted on our silence and our shame. What would you recommend to prevent this from happening to other workers?" "Transparency in employment decisions, mandatory reporting of demographic data in hiring and firing, and protection for whistleblowers who expose these practices." Sometimes patience is the most powerful weapon. The congressional testimony led to federal legislation strengthening age discrimination protections. The private equity firm faced massive fines and federal oversight. TechFlow was forced to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination policies and provide restitution to affected employees. But for me, the real victory was personal. I walked Sarah to her high school graduation, something I'd missed with college applications because I was always working late. As we stood outside the auditorium, she adjusted my tie and smiled. "Dad, I'm proud of you. Not just for fighting back, but for showing me that sometimes doing the right thing is hard, but it's always worth it. Thank you, sweetheart. Everything I did was for your generation, so you'd never have to accept injustice as normal. Dad, my economics teacher used your case as an example when we studied labor rights. She called you a catalyst for systemic change. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man Marcus had dismissed as an outdated legacy had become a case study in modern business ethics. Marcus, meanwhile, had left corporate America entirely. I heard through mutual connections that he was working for a nonprofit organization advocating for workplace equality. Perhaps our confrontation had changed him, as much as his actions had changed me. Linda and I were finally able to take that vacation to Europe we'd been planning for 15 years. As we sat in a cafe in Paris, watching Sarah practice her high school French with the waiter, my phone buzzed with an email from another company. Subject: confidential. We need your help. The message was from a senior engineer at a major tech company describing familiar patterns. Older employees being marginalized, their ideas stolen by younger colleagues, systematic exclusion from strategic planning. Robert, I've read about your case. The same thing is happening here. Would you be willing to provide guidance? Linda saw me reading and raised an eyebrow. Another one? Another one. What are you going to do? I looked at Sarah, animated and confident as she navigated a conversation in a second language, and I thought about the world I wanted to leave for her generation. I'm going to help, I said. This fight isn't over. It's just beginning. Every one of us can be an agent of change. Sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to risk everything you have. That night, as I tucked Sarah into her hotel bed, she grabbed my hand. Dad, I know I'm going to college soon, but I want you to know, you kept your promise. You showed me that good people can win if they're smart and patient and brave. Thank you, baby. That means everything to me. As I turned off the light, I realized that Marcus had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't an outdated legacy. I was exactly what the future needed. Someone with enough experience to understand how systems really work, enough patience to build a real case, and enough courage to fight for what's right. The despised had indeed become the powerful. But more importantly, the voiceless had found their voice, and change was spreading across an entire industry. Sometimes, justice doesn't just arrive. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, one careful step at a time.